Hello, this is David Wilcoxon, and in the Preterism Decoded Introduction video, I provide many points that invalidate the preterist narrative of the fulfillment of the prophecies in Revelation. When I teach the historicist fulfillment of the 70th week of Daniel 9 and the Olivet Discourse, futurists tend to call me a preterist, but that's a false association. So to clarify, let's define the terminology of the three primary views of prophecy fulfillment. A partial preterist believes that most of Revelation was fulfilled in the first century, that Nero was the antichrist, and Jerusalem the harlot. A full preterist or hyper-preterist believes that Messiah returned in the first century. A futurist believes that most of Revelation is fulfilled during the last 7 years. And historicists believe that Revelation is fulfilled from the first century until Messiah returns. They believe that the 70th week of Daniel 9 and the Olivet Discourse were historically fulfilled in the first century. In this video, we'll look at what Messiah's saints have believed since the first century to see if the preterist or historicist view was promoted. What you will see is that it's only been during the last few centuries that the preterist view has become popular, as the enemy has pushed it to deflect blame away from the Antichrist beast. If you know of people before 1800 AD who have given a preterist explanation that Nero was the Antichrist and that Revelation was fulfilled in the first century, please provide them in a comment. I've watched videos from preterists citing quotes from the early church fathers, which they spin to make it seem like they were teaching the preterist view. But you will see that's not the case, which means that the people who published the videos were either ignorantly not providing relevant quotes, or they were purposely hiding them. Remember that for the preterist narrative to seem plausible, the book of Revelation needs to have been written before 66 AD. A late date destroys the preterist position, as Revelation 1:1 points to things which must shortly come to pass. And Revelation 1:3 says that the time is at hand. Because the preterist explanation is date dependent, preterists seek to refute any evidence that disproves it instead of seeking truth. Preterist Kenneth L. Gentry, in the book The Beast of Revelation, says, if the late date of around 95 to 96 AD is accepted, a wholly different situation would prevail. The events in the mid and late 60s of the first century would be absolutely excluded as possible fulfillments. The prophecies within Revelation would be opened to an abundance of speculative scenarios, which could be extrapolated into the indefinite future. Revelation might outline the course of church history according to any number of outlines or to certain general principles. So Gentry is declaring that if the apocalyptic vision was given in the latter part of the first century, then we should look to see how the prophecies are fulfilled during church history from the first century until Messiah returns. In his book, The Last Days According to Jesus, preterist R.C. Sproul says, if the book was written after 70 AD, then its contents manifestly do not refer to events surrounding the fall of Jerusalem. This is why preterists make excuses to dismiss the witness of the early church fathers, saying that Irenaeus was wrong and that all the others base their explanation on that of Irenaeus. But that lacks credibility, as the early church fathers affirm what Irenaeus proclaimed, and we have many witnesses to the same explanation. In a legal court case, you bring forth the witnesses. The witness of the early church fathers tells us that John was banished to the Isle of Patmos by Emperor Domitian, not Nero. This means that Revelation was not written before 66 AD and invalidates the preterist position. The early church fathers did not teach that most of Revelation was fulfilled in the first century, or that Nero, Titus, nor Domitian was the Antichrist, which refutes the preterist position. The early church fathers believed that the prophecies in Revelation describe events that take place from the first century until Messiah's return. Most of the prophecies were yet to be fulfilled in their time, but they believed the historicist narrative, not the preterist one or the end times futurist one. The early church fathers believed that the antichrist beast would rise to power after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, which restrained the son of perdition from taking power. One has to throw out the witness of the early church fathers to proclaim that preterism was the belief of Messiah's saints, and you'll know that preterism is a fatally flawed narrative when you see what they taught. As I read the quotes, I pray that you will listen to what they're proclaiming instead of seeking to dismiss the explanation if it doesn't align with your current beliefs. Eusebius, who lived from 260 to 339 AD, and is known as the father of church history due to his classic work, Ecclesiastical History, recorded that the grandchildren of Messiah's brother Jude testified to Emperor Domitian that Christ would come in glory to judge the quick and the dead at the end of the world. The testimony of Messiah's family invalidates the full preterist position that Messiah returned in the 1st century. Of the family of the Lord, there were still living the grandchildren of Jude, who is said to have been the Lord's brother according to the flesh. And when they were asked concerning Christ and his kingdom, of what sort it was, and where and when it was to appear, they answered that it was not a temporal, nor an earthly kingdom, but a heavenly and angelic one, which would appear at the end of the world, when he should come in glory to judge the quick and the dead, and to give unto every one according to his work. Upon hearing this, Domitian did not pass judgment against them, but despising them as of no account, he let them go, and by a decree put a stop to the persecution of the church. But after Domitian had reigned 15 years, and Nerva had succeeded to the empire, the Roman Senate, according to the writers that record the history of those days, voted that Domitian's honors should be canceled, and that those who had been unjustly banished to the Isle of Patmos should return to their homes and have their property restored to them. It was at this time that the Apostle John returned from his banishment in the island and took up his abode at Ephesus, according to the ancient Christian tradition. Eusebius said, at that time the apostle and evangelist John, the one whom Jesus loved, was still living in Asia and governing the churches of that region, having returned after the death of Domitian from his exile on the island. Apocryphal books and letters to churches from early church fathers are not part of the official canon of Scripture, but they're still valuable for historical reference and exhortation. The Epistle of Barnabas, which was written around 100 AD, points to a future little horn of Daniel 7, which tells us that they were not declaring that Nero fulfilled that role. It says, and the prophet also speaks thus, 10 kingdoms shall reign upon the earth, and a little king shall rise up after them, who shall subdue under one 3 of the kings. In like manner, Daniel says concerning the same, and I beheld the 4th beast, wicked and powerful, and more savage than all the beasts of the earth, and how from it sprang up 10 horns, and out of them a little budding horn, and how it subdued under one 3 of the horns. Early church fathers Ignatius and Polycarp, both who were disciples of John the Apostle, wrote epistles, the 7 epistles of Ignatius, Ignatius' letter to Polycarp, Ignatius' letter to Smyrna, Polycarp to the Philippians, and the epistle of Polycarp. Neither Ignatius or Polycarp proclaimed that the prophecies in Revelation had been fulfilled in the 1st century. They did not proclaim that Nero was the Antichrist or that Messiah returned in the 1st century. Justin Martyr, who was put to death in Rome about 165 AD, speaks of the appearance of the future man of apostasy, the man of sin, who speaks strange things against the Most High, and ventures to do unlawful deeds on the earth against us Christians. He whom Daniel foretells would have dominion for a time and times and half, is already even at the door, about to speak blasphemous and daring things about the Most High. We see by the witness of Justin Martyr that the Antichrist, the son of perdition, was yet to appear, so it was not Nero. Irenaeus, who lived from about 120 to 202 AD, was a disciple of Polycarp, so if anyone knew when the apocalyptic vision was given to John, it would be Irenaeus. He said, by means of the events which shall occur in the time of the Antichrist, it is shown that he, being an apostate and a robber, is anxious to be adored as God, and that although a mere slave, he wishes to be proclaimed as king. For he, being endued with all the power of the devil, shall not come as a righteous king, nor as a legitimate king in subjection to God, but as an impious, unjust, and lawless one, setting aside idols to persuade men that he himself is God, raising himself up as the only idol. Moreover, Paul has also pointed out this, which I have shown in many ways, that the temple in Jerusalem was made by the direction of the true God. For the apostle himself, speaking in his own person, distinctly called it the temple of God, in which the enemy shall sit, endeavoring to show himself as Christ. Irenaeus said, "But when this antichrist shall have devastated all things in this world, he will reign for 3 years and 6 months, and will sit in the temple at Jerusalem. And then the Lord will come from heaven in the clouds, in the glory of the Father, sending this man and those who follow him into the lake of fire." So in those quotes, we see that Irenaeus declared that the Antichrist had not been revealed in his lifetime. Irenaeus identified the Antichrist with Paul's man of sin, Daniel's little horn, and John's beast of Revelation 13. He held that Rome, the fourth prophetic kingdom, would split into a tenfold partition, the 10 horns of Daniel 7 and the 10 horns in Revelation 17, over which the Antichrist would rule. Tertullian, who lived from 160 to 220, was an important early Christian theologian and prolific writer. He said, "The man of sin, the son of perdition, who must first be revealed before the Lord comes, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, and who is to sit in the temple of God and boast himself as being God. According indeed to our view, he is Antichrist, as it is taught us in both the ancient and new prophecies, and by the Apostle John, who says that already many false prophets have gone out into the world, the forerunners of Antichrist, who deny that Christ is come in the flesh and do not acknowledge Jesus, meaning in God the Creator." Tertullian held that the Roman Empire was the restraining force written about by Paul in Thessalonians 2, 7-8. The fall of Rome and the disintegration of the 10 provinces of the Roman Empire into 10 kingdoms were to make way for the Antichrist. Tertullian said, "For that day shall not come unless indeed there first come a falling away. He, Paul, means indeed of this present empire, and that man of sin be revealed. That is to say, Antichrist, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalted himself above all that is called God or religion, so that he sitteth in the temple of God, affirming that he is God. Remember ye not that when I was with you, I used to tell you these things? And now ye know what detaineth, that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now hinders must hinder, until he be taken out of the way. And what obstacles are there but the Roman state, the falling away of which, by being scattered into the 10 kingdoms, shall introduce Antichrist upon its ruins? And then shall be revealed the wicked one, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish." Tertullian said, "For we know that a mighty shock impending over the whole earth, in fact, the very end of all things threatening dreadful woes, is only retarded by the continuing existence of the Roman Empire." And he said Babylon, in our John, is a figure of the city Rome, as being equally great and proud of her sway and triumphant over the saint. He's declaring that the Roman Empire, which is called Babylon, restrained the Antichrist from taking power. And this refutes the preterist position. Hippolytus of Rome, who lived from 170 to 236 AD, supports the later date. He says John, again in Asia, was banished by Domitian, the king, to the Isle of Patmos, in which he also wrote his gospel and saw the apocalyptic vision. And in Trajan's time he fell asleep at Ephesus, where his remains were sought for but could not be found. So he's declaring that John was released from Patmos, where he had been banished by Domitian, and that he went to Ephesus and that he died during Trajan's reign. Regarding the Antichrist beast, he said, "For a deceiver seeks to liken himself in all things to the Son of God, Christ is a lion, so Antichrist is also a lion. Christ is a king, so Antichrist is also a king. The Savior was manifested as a lamb, so he too will in like manner appear as a lamb, though within he is a wolf. Hippolytus also said, "But as time now presses for the consideration of the question immediately at hand, and as what has been already said in the introduction with regard to the glory of God may suffice, it is proper that we take the Holy Scriptures themselves in hand, and find out from them what, and of what manner, the coming of Antichrist is, on what occasion, and at what time that implores one shall be revealed." Hippolytus said, "The toes of clay of iron in Daniel 2 are the 10 horns of Daniel 7, which are to be. The one other little horn springing up in their midst is the Antichrist. The 10 horns were emblems of the kingdoms that are yet to rise. The other little horn that grows up amongst them meant the Antichrist in their midst." Hippolytus also said, "When the times are fulfilled, and the 10 horns spring from the beast in the last times, then Antichrist will appear among them. When he makes war against the saints and persecutes them, then may we expect the manifestation of the Lord from heaven." So by that, we see that Hippolytus was not pointing to Nero as the Antichrist, and we see that the concept of Revelation being written before the desolation of Jerusalem is invalidated. He was a historicist. Those witnesses alone should be enough to expose the preterist narrative of prophecy fulfillment as false. I pray that these witnesses help you see the truth of historicism and the deception of preterism. I will continue giving the witness of the saints in the next video. And the ultimate proof that preterism is false is the historicist narrative, which shows how most of the prophecies in Revelation have been fulfilled during the last 1900 years. The 3 Revelation timeline fulfillment summary videos give you a big picture view of the apocalyptic vision. And the Revelation Timeline Decoded video series, which has 66 videos, gives a detailed explanation. And there are PDF summaries on the Revelation Timeline Decoded website, which you can save and print, which help you see the big picture. And that address is revelationtimelinedecoded.com. If this lesson helped you, please click on the YouTube thumbs up, post a comment, and share it with others. And be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you're notified about new videos. Keep pressing on for the glory of our King. I love y'all. Shalom.